Hello Pauper Gamers, is 420 Dragon, and we're gonna be looking at spoilers from the new set today. Okay, so what is up Pauper Gamers? It is me, 420 Dragon. We're gonna be looking at spoilers from the new set today here. And let's see, let's start off with a banger. I think this is probably one of the best cards from the set. Energy Refractor, 2 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, 2 mana, add 1 mana of any color. So this obviously fits right into Tron as a way for them to filter mana. We were talking about it on my stream. It is definitely a little bit less powerful than Prophetic Prism in the nut draws of Tron. You're not able to play turn 3 Muldrifter with this. Like turn 1 map, turn 2 crack map, turn 3 Muldrifter is not a thing you can do with Energy Refractor. But the upside is that you are able to make multiple colored mana per turn off of just one Refractor. So there definitely could be a possibility of Flickertron returning in some capacity here. It does have the artifact enters the battlefield, draw a card tag, so can be useful in some other strategies. I did hear some people talking about how in Familiars you can actually use this to make infinite blue mana with one of the infinite white mana combos, like you know, snapping the Faithful with 2 Chanceries and a Familiar, and double Mancer Ghostly Flicker. Feel like that's probably a bit too hard to pull off for it to really matter. So I don't think this card will see much play in FAMs, personally. But I do expect this to see play in some Tron decks. I have been seeing some Eggs Tron running around lately. This card fits right in there. It's probably totally fine. And maybe it'll be able to put Flickertron back on the map. Okay, so let's go to the next card, Sentinel Stalwart. This card is kind of innocuous, but I think there could potentially be something here. It's pretty weak stats. 1 mana, 1/1 is not very good stats, but it is able to tap an untapped artifact or creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. Which could be strong. Could offer some sort of artifacty deck a way to ramp and make mana of any color. I'm not sure what deck would want this, but I decided to put it on here because it's almost playable. So that's my thoughts on that. Dwarven Forge Chanter. This card is kind of mid, but I could see it seeing play. It has Ward Pay 2 life, so it does want to go into a red aggressive deck, and then it's a 1/3 Prowess for 2 here. So I could see this seeing play in some sort of red deck. It's definitely not easy to block. It is a little bit costly to kill. You're going to have to spend a card, some mana, and probably some life too. So this could maybe replace like Keishas Flame Breather in Cult of the Red. I could see that. I think it's definitely worth trying. And then I guess it could potentially see play in like Kiln Fiend strategies, but I don't imagine it's better than any of the creatures that are already in that deck. Maybe they use it as like an extra creature, like a 13th creature or something. Let's see, next we got Jixian Infiltrator. This card is 2 mana with 2/1. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on it. This card could be okay. It's basically like a little bit of a nerfed Mortician Beetle, because it only triggers off of things that you sack instead of things that both players sack. But just having another type of effect like that could be enough to give the mono black sack deck the buff that it needs. I noticed that that deck is pretty powerful. It does have strong matchups against Affinity, but it definitely struggles against cards like Prismatic Strands, which are pretty popular right now. And I'm not sure if it can do very well against red. So I'm not sure if that deck will be any good, but surely it gets at least a little bit of a buff from the Jixian Infiltrator. I'm sure they run at least a couple copies of this thing. So yeah. Emergency Weld. This card is kind of interesting. I'm not sure what would actually want this, but it's 2 mana. Return target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Create a 1/1. So I'm not sure. This could be like maybe see play in some sort of Skyfisher deck, but I guess it's probably not better than font of Erebos or whatever the card is that they bounce with the Skyfisher, and then they bring back the Skyfisher, and you know it's like impossible to kill it or whatever. But it does make a 1/1. Can get back artifacts, so maybe you use this on like your Ichor Wellspring or something. It's fairly cheap. It's probably not going to see play, but could potentially see play, I guess. And then we got Weakstone Subjugation. This card's actually not bad. I think this is definitely a little bit of a buff to mono blue decks. It's able to enchant target artifact or creature for 1 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 3. If you do, tap enchanted permanent, and then enchanted permanent does not untap during its controller's untap step. So this can be nice. You throw it on your opponent's like bridge or whatever, and it doesn't untap. You could even play a main deck and just throw it on your opponent's creature. It doesn't untap. It's kind of like a removal. I guess the weakest part about this card is that they can just sack whatever is on it to Deadly Dispute and still get value out of the card that way. So like if you're using it versus Affinity, they're going to be able to Deadly Dispute whatever you put this on, and then it's not like it's a little bit worse than Revoke Existence in that regard, but you still do kind of get rid of their land, and it is only 1 mana, and it's obviously a blue card, so it's probably a little bit of a buff to mono blue. So like mono blue fairies strategies, maybe the mono blue Tolarian Terrors we've seen running around a little bit. Does probably get a little bit stronger with this. We got Blanchwood Prowler. I'm not sure what deck wants this. This is an interesting effect. 2 mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards. You can put a land from among them into your hand. If you don't, put a +1/+1 counter on it. I don't know, man. Maybe lands becomes playable at some point. Probably not, but I guess I thought this card was kind of worth noting. It does mill you. It's kind of like a bad Satyr Wayfinder. This card's probably bad. Okay, and then we got Scrapwork Rager. This card's like kind of interesting. It's 4 mana, 2/2. It's kind of like Phyrexian Rager, except it costs an extra mana. And as a battlefield, you draw a card, you lose 1 life, and then it has Unearth for 4. So maybe this ends up seeing play in like a Tron deck that wants to draw cards and maybe get value. Maybe he's using like Ephemerate or stuff, and you can flicker it, and you know it's colorless, so you don't actually have to be spending any colored mana on it. And it does have Unearth, so it is like a nice little value card. Maybe it ends up in some sort of deck that likes to mill itself, but I mean I can't imagine spending 4 mana to what is basically at best deal 2 damage and draw a card is super desirable effect. So I would probably imagine if this sees play anywhere, it's probably in like a Tron deck that is able to not care about the casting cost so much and likes having a colorless card. But yeah, I just wanted to put this card on here because I think it is kind of interesting. Warlords Elite. This card is kind of interesting. Maybe this sees some play in White Weenie strategies. It's 3 mana 4/4. As additional cost to cast it, you tap 2 untap artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control. I don't know. It is kind of hard to argue for a 3 mana 4/4 in a format where you can play 1 mana 5/5s and 0 mana 4/4s. Especially with a bit of a drawback here, condition. Especially for like those mono white decks, they're trying to go wide. You know, they can probably meet the condition fairly easily, but if they're not meeting the condition, if your opponent has like just Electricaried you or just Arms of Hadar you and you top deck this, you're really sad. And so this card's probably bad, but I don't know. Maybe it sees some experimentation in mono white strategies here. Okay, so we got Airlift Chaplain. This card costs 3 mana. 3 mana 1/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards. You can put a plains or a creature card with mana value 3 or less from among the milled cards into your hand. If you don't, it gets bigger. This card is kind of expensive at 3 mana, but maybe it sees some play in some sort of white deck. I mean, it's not like white is really needing another creature that is cost 3 mana and basically draws a card when it enters the battlefield. But this is another option in that slot. But I don't know, it's got some stiff competition with the 3 mana 2/1 Angelic Overseer and what is that guy? The 2/3 Bugler. So I'm not sure. This card probably won't see play, but we are getting kind of a lot of this effect. Maybe it's time to break out the blue familiar, cost reduce all your 3 drops, and then do something like that. Recommission. This card's actually kind of interesting. 2 mana sorcery, 1 white, 1 colorless. Return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If a creature enters the battlefield this way, it gets a little bigger. So this card is kind of like a better version of the black card we looked at earlier. Puts the thing in play. It doesn't get back any size of artifact or creature, but you're probably just going to want to be getting back small stuff anyway because this is Pauper and we're not playing big stuff. This can get back Ichor Wellspring, can get back like Skyfisher or whatever. Can get back like, I don't know, I guess it probably doesn't see play in Affinity. I mean, Affinity doesn't play white anyway, but maybe this sees play in some sort of Skyfisher deck. It is definitely a kind of interesting effect, so I wanted to throw it on here. Could potentially see some play. Deadly Riposte, I think this card's actually not very bad. This card is actually like potentially playable. It could do pretty nice things against mono red here. It's 2 mana, 1 white, 1 colorless, instant. Deadly Riposte deals 3 damage to target tapped creature and you gain 2 life. So I think this could definitely be a card that sees some play as an answer to mono red. It's able to trade for one of their cards and also gain you a bit of life in the process. 2 mana is kind of the best rate you can get for white removal anyway, so it's not super far behind. The only problem is that it only does 3 damage, so it's kind of narrow. Swift Spear can potentially grow out of range of this, and then it has to target a tapped thing, so you can't just like use it on the Kessig Flame Breather and kill it before they untap or whatever. But I could see this seeing play as an answer to aggressive decks like mono red. And then we got Goblin Blaster Knight. This is, I think, one of the best cards in the set for Pauper. 1 mana, 1/2 Goblin. Not when it enters the battlefield. Goblin Blaster Runner gets +2/+0 and has menace as long as you sacrificed a permanent this turn. I think this effect is actually really powerful and fits pretty nicely into the Goblin strategies and the Kuldotha red deck that we've seen running around. I'm not sure if the Kuldotha red deck does enough sacrificing of permanents to have this fit right in, but it certainly is a buff to Goblins at the very least, and I could definitely see Kuldotha red wanting to change their deck a bit to play this card, as it's just a really powerful 1-drop. It's hard to block, and if you're able to turn it on consistently, it's going to be hitting for 3, which can be really powerful. And 1/2 stat line is not bad for 1 mana. So yeah, I think that card is pretty good. We'll probably see play, honestly. Union of the Third Path. This is another interesting card that I think could see play as an answer to mono red. It is a lot slower. It doesn't affect the board or anything, but I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of deck that wants to gain a lot of life for some reason and has a lot of cards in hand. Could use this effect. It is 1 white, 2 colorless, instant. Draw a card, then you gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. I think it's kind of a weak effect, but maybe there's some deck that wants this. We got Keishas Dig Site. I threw this on here because I think I've heard a lot of people talking about this potentially seeing play in Tron decks. I don't think this card is very good. It is a land that taps to add a colorless. You can pay 3 mana to surveil 1. I think this card is pretty bad, honestly. Especially in Tron decks, because I think that the Tron decks are already having a lot of colorless mana sources, so they're not going to want to play any or many more colorless land sources. They want to have the rest of their lands be making colored mana most of the time. Sometimes maybe we'll see a Haunted Fengraf running around, but I think that that effect is a lot more powerful than being able to surveil 1 every turn. So yeah, I could be wrong on this card, but I don't think this card will see play. And then we got Falaji Archaeologist. This card is very powerful and definitely can either complement Augur of Bolas or give it some competition in certain strategies. It's 1 blue, 1 colorless for a 0/3. When it enters a battlefield, you mill 3 cards. You can put a non-creature, non-land card from among the milled cards this way into your hand. If you don't, it gets a little bigger. So I think this card is really nice. The modal sort of feature on this card where you can just not pick anything and have it be a 2 mana 1/4 is, I think, pretty useful against decks like mono red, where the 1/4 can block the small dudes and be resistant to lightning bolt. So they have to actually throw away a 1/1 or throw away like at least a damage. You can maybe block a Swift Spear and have it eat a lightning bolt. So I think this card is pretty powerful, one of the better cards in the set for sure, and can probably see play in a variety of strategies like Blue-Black Terror, maybe some mono-blue decks want this. I think there could even be versions of FAMs that want to play this card. And then, yeah, just having like an Augur of Bolas effect that can hit like artifacts, enchantments, things that aren't instants or sorceries is definitely kind of interesting and opens up, I think, a decent bit of deck building space. So I like this card a lot. I think this card will probably see some play. We got our Gothian Opportunist. This card is kind of bad. I just put it on here because maybe there's some way to use the Power Stone tokens. I'm not really sure. But it is a 1 green and 2 colorless for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you create a tapped Power Stone token, which is an artifact with tap, add colorless. This mana can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell. So you can use this to like pay for activated abilities of stuff or cast artifact spells. There's kind of a lot of cards in the set that make Power Stone tokens. I'm not really sure how to evaluate them. I think they're probably not very good, but I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of way to abuse the Power Stone tokens that I'm not thinking about. So I guess we'll see how good those end up being. So Overwhelming Remorse. I've heard a lot of people talking about this card too. It says 5 mana instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. It costs 1 black and 4 colorless. Exile target creature, planeswalker. I think this does probably see play in a few decks like Tortured Existence, which obviously does not really exist. But I guess the real one is probably Cycle Storm. It's probably pretty good in Cycle Storm. That's a deck that wants to put a lot of creatures in the graveyard anyways, already doing that. And is playing black and maybe sometimes needs a removal spell. And if they do need a removal spell, this is probably the one that they'll pick. Probably are not wanting to pay 4 life to snuff out because, you know, that deck probably cares a bit about its life total, as 4 life could end up equaling a turn, and a turn could end up equaling the amount of time you need to combo off with that deck. And it is also able to hit like Gurmag Angler, just any black creature. But I don't think this really sees play in pretty much any other deck. I think Snuff Out is probably mostly better. Cast Down is probably mostly better. There's not a lot of decks in Pauper that want to be putting a lot of creature cards in their graveyard anyway, so I don't think this sees play outside of Cycle Storm and Tortured Existence if people decide to play that. I definitely don't think it's enough to make Tortured Existence good or anything. But yeah, I mean, it's like fringe playable. Sees play in some archetypes probably, but I don't think it's like a premier black removal spell or anything like that. We got Scrapwork Cohort. This is another one of the Unearth guys. It's 4 mana 5/3, so it is kind of a big beater. It's an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token, and then it's got Unearth for 2 and a white. This card's probably bad, but I don't know. It does have kind of a big body. Just have Unearth. So again, maybe there's like some sort of Tron deck that wants to, I don't know, play these artifact guys with Unearth and do stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, that's going to be all. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait till the set comes out so we can try some of the banger cards like the red cards and the Archaeologist. Yeah, I think it should be a lot of fun. They got some cool cards in the set. Thanks for watching.